This is the Lunduke Hour for January 17th, 2017. This is the very first episode of this ridiculous show. If you are watching this very first episode, that probably means that you have spent a ridiculous amount of time over the last ridiculous number of years watching me say stupid things about Linux. This show is a little bit different. What you are seeing now is... I don't want to call it professional because that is something that will never be used to describe me, but it's a little bit better. It's a little bit higher quality. I'm not just using ridiculous cheap microphones and recording in my kitchen when my kids are asleep. This has got actual soundproofing, got actual realness here. And this show, we are going to be talking about Linux and free software and free culture and all the things I tend to rant about day in, day out for the last decade. We're also going to be hitting on a lot of other topics as well going forward. We're going to be talking about things like the intersection of politics and technology, why the mainstream media can't seem to cover words like encryption without making themselves sound stupid, and a variety of other topics. Very nerd-centric, very tech-centric, a little bit of an emphasis on free software stuff because that's just who I am. This show, you are watching the very first one right now. Going forward, you will be able to see this show Monday through Thursday. Every Monday through Thursday, unless I'm traveling and doing something else. And then, I don't know, you can go to YouTube and watch a rerun. Now, for this very first episode, I brought in someone who, A, would be a delightfully good guinea pig and I could abuse rather happily and not feel too terribly bad about it. And B, is actually doing something kind of cool right now. So I brought in a guy named Barton George from Dell. He works over at Dell. I believe he calls himself an architect. He didn't really know what his title was, but we went with architect. And he works on the Dell computers that are shipping with Linux. Their laptops, their all-in-ones, all that sort of thing. And because of that, and because of the interestingness of that, let's have him on. Let's talk about it. So, Barton George. Barton George, there's the man right there. Say hello to the entire world, Barton.
Hello, Hawaii, entire world. Really happy to be here on your very first pilot. I feel like, as you said, a pig or a guinea pig or something like that.
Yeah, that's something like that. Okay, Barton. So you and I have talked in the past. I've reviewed some of your laptops in the past, all of which I have nothing but good stuff to say about. Dell is doing a lot of things right now in the Linux space. So let's talk about that first, and then I want to get into some other stuff. So right now, as of this moment, as of January 17th, what computers and types of computers are available from Dell preloaded with Linux right now?
Holy moly, that's a tough question. There are a boatload. So first up to say is that this is fortuitous because the 5520 just became available today. And so if you're not familiar with that, it's the precision mobile workstation.
That's that big Herkin beast, right? That's that huge one.
Yes, exactly. But it's not quite as what shall I say? Should I dare use the word clunky as before? It's actually really good looking. It's really svelte. And so even though it is beefy, it's not, it's actually kind of nice.
I remember I reviewed the old beefy one, and while it was a bit clunky, that was a beast of a machine. That was a really, I mean, in terms, it really wasn't even a laptop. It is just more like a mobile workstation that kind of almost reminds me of like the old compact luggables. Like it's not quite that beefy, but it's just this big portable LAN party beast of a Linux powered laptop. I love that thing. Anyway, continue. What else you got right now?
Well, so that's the lineup, right? So we have the precision mobile workstations. I'll start with that, and then we can talk about the lighter, svelter stuff. But we've got the 3520, which is sort of a more economic version, shall we say it, of the 5520, and then you've got the two big ones which are coming up. I mean, if you thought the 5520 was big and beefy, we've got the 7720 and the 7520, and those are really uber powerful stuffs. And so that's the precision lineup, and that's also the one that we're introducing, the all-in-one. So this is one that's pretty darn cool.
And that's the new all-in-one desktop, right?
Yes, exactly. Very cool. Good for you. So we've had, and just take a step back, is we've had precisions with Linux for a long time. The different part about this is it's more of the ones that would be in the sweeter spot to the developers. And I can get to another story about how we got here. But getting back to your original question, we really have a ton of systems, both desk side plus servers plus real light laptops that are coming preloaded with Linux. And we have for almost, particularly with the server side, almost 20 years now. The real difference is that the new news here is that we took it from what should I say, more of the workhorse models or back in the data center, and we put it on our higher end systems like the XPS 13, which is what kicked off Project Sputnik to begin with. So that's the big difference. And so you've got the XPS 13 that's shipping with Ubuntu preloaded in Europe and the States. And then you've got the new rev of the Precision lineup, which I mentioned that we announced early last week, and those are slowly becoming available. 3520 available last week, as I say, right up today. 5520, the all-in-one, and the 77 series will be coming pretty soon. So as I said, we've got, yeah, go ahead.
Is it safe to say that at this point Dell is really expanding the Linux offerings that they have? Because it seems like when the first XPS 13 shipped with Linux, it was like headline news in the Linux world. Everyone who runs Linux was like, hallelujah! The company I work for buys all their computers through one of like 3 or 4 vendors, and I can finally order one that's running Linux by default. And everyone just kind of freaked out and lost their marbles, and it was super, super exciting. And now, you see all these new rollouts just within the last couple of months from Dell, and it's getting attention. Like, people are like, yeah, that's great, but it's not quite as startling as it once was. It seems like that ramp up is increasing. Like, there's more models now. Like, I don't remember seeing an all-in-one desktop like the iMacs of old and whatnot coming from Dell preloaded with Linux. What's driving this within the company other than you?
Well, so a couple of things I'd say is, first of all, although you may be old and jaded now and familiar with this for the last,
I am pretty jaded.
4.5 years.
Yeah.
There are tons of people who every day say, holy moly, Dell offers Linux preloaded on these cool systems. So even though there's a tight group of folks who've known about it since the beginning, and I get things on Twitter saying, oh, I've got one of the first generation Sputniks, there's still just a boatload of folks who every day are surprised and pleasantly surprised to find out that we're doing this.
That's good.
So there's that. And then the other bit is, from the very beginning, so Sputnik was launched through an internal incubation project. And so the idea there was, I pitched the idea, I said, let's do a developer laptop, and it's going to be preloaded with Linux. And the other thing is, we're going to do it leveraging the community, and we're going to do it all out in the open via my blog. And so that was something that was kind of new. And I shouldn't just say it was just my blog. That's where the info was. And then we had something called this, we had storm sessions on, it was basically a way where you could put ideas, vote them up or down. So in the blog, when I announced it, I said, here, what we want to do is we want to get your input on what you think you'd like in a developer laptop. And so people would post on the storm session, and then would say, and I think back then it was at least 8 gigs of RAM. And now that's, of course, gone up since then, but those are the things that people would say, okay, this is what I want. So basically got the green light and got to go ahead. So because it was a smaller effort, we started out just with one config and one system, which was the XPS 13. So what's happened is, as this has gotten more and more successful, we've been able to add more and more configs plus more and more individual models. And so that's what you're seeing now, is because it's starting to do well, it's expanding, right? So you get a beachhead, and then you grow from there. But otherwise, if you start out huge and come out with 7 systems and 100 million configs, the thing's going to collapse under its own weight, and everyone's going to say, what a failure, Barton, you suck, and see you later. So
Right. And it just gets tired of hearing Barton, you suck all the time. I get it.
Exactly.
So, I suppose at that point, it's a fair assumption to make that these are selling fairly well. I mean, well enough for Dell to continue to invest in the project and keep expanding the number of models. Does Dell provide any sort of information on how many they've sold?
No, what PR will let me say is that from initial investment of $40,000, it has returned over the 4 years tens of millions. So that's as specific as I can get.
So from
Um,
there, we can kind of randomly do math and try and extrapolate in our heads what theoretically it might be in terms of numbers sold.
yeah, exactly,
Okay.
exactly.
All right. That's
So
fair.
and the story there is it's the ROI, the amount of
Yeah.
what it costs to invest and then what we've gotten back. Because the majority of clients that Dell sells, they do much, much more than that. So this has always been targeted at what Dell would consider a niche market, but one that I argued from the beginning is extremely influential. And so if you want to sell to IT, one of the people most influential whispering in IT's ears is our developers. And so if you can start showing them that you get it, you understand it, then they're more likely to look at your entire series of stuff and say, oh, okay, let's take a look at these guys.
That is the fact that there's big companies like Dell who are sitting down and from a strategic perspective saying let's take developers seriously and provide developers with the hardware they want makes me really really happy. While I may not be a developer anymore, that's still my roots and it tickles me in all the right spots. So really there aren't a lot of companies though doing this. Why? I mean, there's the niche ones, right? There's the boutique shops, Zarizen, System 76, Pogo Linux. There's a couple of well respected but smaller niche players in this world of shipping hardware with Linux. Dell seems to be the one that's the big dog that's diving into it. Um, what is it that Acer and Asus and HP and all of them don't seem to be getting, because they've all dabbled in Linux here and there. And then as soon as they stuck their toe in the Linux water, they yanked their foot out, declared it too cold, and never went back in. How is it that Dell is succeeding and all these other companies just aren't? I mean, what's going on with that? And why, man, why?
Well, I think so. The one of the things is, like I said, we've been doing it for a long time. So it's not just that we've started with Project Sputnik. As I said, the difference in Sputnik is taking Linux and putting it on a high-end laptop, which is something that was a very new positioning to folks here. They thought before that if you put a free operating system, in the case of Ubuntu, on it, and then you take one of the lower end systems, you get a very attractive low price point system. There's a big market for that.
Yeah.
What we were saying is, guess what? People actually pay for a good system that runs Ubuntu, not because it's a free OS, but because that's the OS that they want. So I think it's getting in there. It was identifying this higher end market and then proving that it could work. And the other thing is, just like a lot of things at large companies, you need to have someone or some people who are championing this, because there's, even though we are a big company, we have we've got so many different efforts that, contrary to what people would think, we don't have boundless resources because we're trying to be as efficient as possible. So each group, particularly at Dell, I think that's something we do pretty well, is uh, work with just the right amount of people to deliver a top quality product. And so to then say, hey, we want to take a resource from here and help on this project, you really need to be a champion, get people excited about doing that. And then we've got folks on the team who, sort of in true open source fashion, are helping out, not because it's part of their day job, but because that's what they want to do, and they just get really excited about doing it.
So why do you do it? I mean, you've been driving this, I mean, through your own personal blog and internally at Dell since the beginning. What's driving? What makes Barton George get out of bed in the morning? What makes you put on your trousers and do up your hair so fancy? What is it? What is it that's driving you, man?
What, uh, so I had all these funny retorts, but then you kept on going. I was going to say, what do you get up
Sorry,
and say the
man.
alarm clock?
That's what I do.
And
I
all
like to
this stuff. But
overwhelm you to just kill any possibility of your funny retorts. That's my job.
yeah, I've got a list here and I'm crossing them off. Okay, can't use that one, can't use that one. But I think it's what I like is being a bit of a contrarian, I guess, and finding something that I truly believe is valuable and important, and marshaling those resources to make happen. So it's the challenge, right? So it's a cause I believe in, and the fact that it's not a slam dunk. And the other thing is, it's something that I have a lot of, and the small group of us who work together have a ton of control over, and we do it in our own way. So a more traditional process at Dell would be to put into a big product review, look at what the pros and cons are, build big business cases, et cetera. Yeah. And as a result, you'd also have a huge team working on it. But what we're able to do is be very, I won't say out of process, because we're definitely, if you're going to sell a system like this, you can't just sort of wing it. But we plug into the process where we need to, but at the same time also are very process light. And so being able to come up with an idea and then see that idea through, and then as you're saying here, it's all of a sudden started to really take off. And I think over the course of the project, we've been doing this now for it's almost been 5 years when I originally pitched this idea. And there was definitely times, there was probably at the 3-year mark, where I had just I felt punch drunk and felt that this thing wasn't gonna go any further. And I was gonna say, hey guys, we can all be very proud of what we did. Let's all pat ourselves on the back, but let's call it a day and call it victory. And then things just sort of seem to keep going. So it hasn't been easy. It hasn't been all.
That would have been a bummer had Dell pulled
sense.
out. I think the amount of articles that would have rained down in the Linux tech world of Linux will never make it into mainstream computers because Dell's pulling out would have just been catastrophic.
Exactly. Well, and then, this is as a side point to that, one thing that I've been really excited to see is the amount of positive, what shall I say, not vibes from the community, but just real nice support from the community, besides in helping to give direction. But you'll see this on the forums. Even when people run into issues, they'll say, hey, we really like what you guys are doing. Could you help us with blah, blah, blah? I'm having issues with this. And we've established that credibility. I'm sure not with everyone, right? You still get those flames on the forum saying you don't know what you're doing, but which was something that I thought was going to be a lot harder to do because of, say, when we announced this, people saying, oh, come on, you guys are just doing a test balloon. You guys are going to do this for 6 months to a year, get tired of it, and that'll be it, and you'll leave us holding the bag. Hey, and I think
half a decade later, you're still going. I mean, that is a bit of a testament. No, I mean, that's awesome. I mean, not like there's not other companies that can manage to do stuff for 5 years, but still, I mean, you didn't fade out, you didn't disappear into the neither. It kept going, and I think you're right. That does give people a lot of confidence that you guys are going to be around to support the hardware and release new stuff in the future.
Yeah, when you say half a decade, it's like, whoa, I guess it is, huh?
Well, I remember impressive. The first time I talked to you about this stuff, you had a lot more hair. I'm just saying.
It's like out to here. Yeah.
I don't know what it is. Every time I talk to you, I just want to like dog on you for something. I have no idea why. It's just
I have that kind of face, or the glasses. I don't know.
By the way, nice glasses.
Stop it some more.
Go ahead.
Flattery will get everywhere. So one thing I was going to say that really blew me away from day one was the amount of interest that we got when I did the initial post on my blog.
Yeah.
Because when we did it, it was, and this is one of the key points that I want to make sure we did, which is never overpromise, and to be very honest with the community. And so didn't come out saying, hey, we're making a Linux laptop, saying, hey, we're going to do this project, have absolutely no idea if this is ever going to become real, we'd love to get your input. Maybe if we get enough positive feedback, it'll become real. But not trying to, give folks false hope. And then the amount of views I got in my blog was just crazy. And I think it's more a testament of how much pent up demand there was for this type of an offering from a high level OEM. I think people were just were starved for it. And even as just as sort of an idea, people were tripping over themselves to say, hey, here's what we think, this is what I'd like to see, and et cetera. So that was really exciting.
I think you're right. I was trying to remember back half a decade ago. I think when you made that initial post, I think I covered it. And that was, if I remember right, yeah, there was nothing. There was no product. It was literally just Dell guy talks about maybe wanting some Linux or something. And that was like about all there was to the story. And I remember thinking, yeah. And we all got excited about that. Just the fact that there was the possibility, the promise of maybe something like that happening was pretty good. And it's not just that you didn't overpromise, you undersold the hell out of it. I mean, you downplayed that to the point of it was almost anti-hype, and it was pulled forward by the fact that there was just such a ridiculous demand, and not just in my little bubble of a world of Linux enthusiasts, but in the general tech world, just like you were saying, with developers and sysadmins and whatnot who are like, yes, great, ship me a piece of hardware that's been tested with at least one of the various open sourcey operating systems, then I stand a chance of running FreeBSD or whatever else on it much better than something that ships out of the gate with, at the time, whatever Windows Vista probably was shipping, something like that. And it was exciting for a lot of us. Yeah. So clearly everything's growing. So clearly Dell is succeeding with this. Where do you go from here? I mean, is it just a slow, continual domination until eventually Dell sells nothing but Linux hardware? I mean, like, how is the general goal just to continue to turn a profit, or is there some sort of Barton George super secret plan where all of the portable lines will one day be under Project Sputnik's umbrella?
Exactly. And I didn't realize I'd shared that with you last time, but yes, you got that right on the head.
Yeah. I got the little encrypted text file with it. Yeah, it's good.
Right. So obviously Linux as an OS on both servers and clients is here to stay. That's a no-brainer. And then the part that I've been focusing on, as I say, is the higher end stuff that's specifically targeted developers. And that's the part that I want to see continue to grow. And then what I'd love to do is, besides seeing more people buy it as a standalone, is look at ways that we could combine it with other offerings that we have at Dell EMC. So one thing is, or in the larger Dell Technologies umbrella, which, for example, would have, say, Pivotal underneath it. And so one of the things, I'm working with somebody over there, just on the side, not an official deal, but to see if we can get PCF dev running on the laptop. And I said it that kind of way so it sounds intelligent, even though you don't know what the heck it is. Now I'll explain what it is. That's Pivotal, Cloud Foundry, and Dev is the developer edition. So even though Cloud Foundry is a big back-end kind of platform that developers write on, there is a version that you can use on your laptop itself to develop in and then push to the cloud. Ironically, that's been done within VirtualBox. And so you can use it on Mac OS, you can use it on Windows. But if you run it on Linux, because it is within VirtualBox, you have to still run it within VirtualBox. So the idea is, can we take it out and make it run natively on Linux? And that's just an example of one of the ways that I would look to see, can we connect it to bigger projects within the larger enterprise? And that'll help to make it even, give it much more credible within the whole corporation in general.
Nice. Okay, I can get behind that. When I assume that you are using these machines, that these are your machines, unless you are running a bunch of Acer machines. Correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Yes, they are Dell.
I assumed as much. And you're running the Dell Linux powered machines. Are you personally running Linux on them, or do you just administer them from afar?
From afar, yeah. I've got to You talking about me personally? You're
Yeah,
saying now,
you
not
personally.
the
I want to know
company.
what Barton
No,
George is doing.
I've got what you call a Windows box here because this is what I need to plug into all the corporate systems. So
Okay.
that's one of the things. Is at this point, yes, yes, say it,
I'm not
yes.
making fun of you, man.
Uh,
You and me, we're
okay,
cool. We're
yeah.
cool,
So
man. I am
yeah,
not judging you at all. Look at my
exactly.
eyes. You see these eyes? No judging.
Yeah, no judge. Okay. So, but I do have a system which I get to take around to yeah, little judge,
Yeah.
that I get to take around to conferences, and that's the one that I like to show off, right? So I do need to get the latest and greatest. I do have the last gen, and I need to get as I said, the new one so I can take it around and show it off to folks.
Yeah, I agree. So you got to have your public machine, and then you can run Windows in private. But as long as you got your public machine, I don't want you going around
And,
popping that up and having the doom ding, whatever the hell the Windows noise is. I don't want to see that.
right.
Don't let me see that out at a conference, Barton.
No, only when I'm doing email, but okay, go ahead.
Okay. So on the Linux front, so I've
Yep.
tested out a couple of the Linux powered Dells over the last few years, and every time I get one, I test it out with whatever they ship with, and they always ship with whatever the long term support version of Ubuntu is, and then within about 2 or 3 days, I format the drive and then I start the process of installing every random Linux distro I can on them until I'm satisfied that they run Linux distros
Yep.
very well. And what I've found is that they do. Almost without exception, like the latest XPS 13 is the one that came up out a few months ago. I mean, I've installed Arch on them and Fedora and OpenSUSE and all sorts of them,
Yeah.
and they all work fantastically well. And that is by far the number one question I get from everyone about these machines is, does it run X distribution? And to be fair, every time I get asked the question, it's about a different distribution. So there's just thousands of people that want to know how well it runs various things. And it does run them all fairly well, at least that I've tried. Has there been any discussions within Dell about anything other than stock Ubuntu? And I have to ask that question, otherwise I will get crucified.
Well, the other one that we're considering is Mandriva, and so we think that we will. Just joking.
All right.
You're supposed to laugh there.
No,
Okay.
no.
Anyway,
That elicited a
no,
solid eyebrow raise, followed by an internal chuckle. I liked it.
exactly. Yeah. So at this point, we're going to keep our resources focused on Ubuntu.
Just one.
And I should say that and I'm talking about specifically for the developer laptops, right? So as as you can imagine, our servers, they come certified. You can get it with SUSE. You can come with
SUSE.
RHEL. You can get it, SUSE. Okay. And then also Oracle Linux. So, and then for example, I'm just going to ramble on here for our, we also have a Chinese version, Chillin, that's out there. We've got,
Can I back you up
things,
momentarily with a side tangent?
Yeah,
I have a question for you, and I'm genuinely curious about this. Do you get a lot of requests for preloading Oracle Linux or Oracle Unbreakable Linux on those machines? And the reason I ask that is I haven't ever met anyone who's deployed it. And so it's become a bit of a running joke about whether or not anyone actually uses it. And so because I don't know of any actual deployments out there in the real world, I figured since you're on, I'd ask you in case you've heard of any. And I don't mean that to dog on the people at Oracle. I do have friends at Oracle who are very nice people, and they don't kill puppies. But I'm very curious.
Yeah. So I think, so the first thing is I don't know too much about that side of the house. All I'll say is from knowing Dell, if we're going to support something, we don't do things just for the heck of it, right?
Right.
Yeah. And so there is a reason. But as I say, that's really not my...
I've never heard of anyone who said, I make sure I ship things with Oracle Linux just as a hobby. It's just what I do for fun. It's specifically Oracle Linux. Yeah.
Exactly. So, yeah, I mean, one of the things recently is, as we talk to people, they're interested in, hey, well, what besides Sputnik, because maybe that's a shiny object they've heard of, what else do you do with Linux? And that's why I've started to talk to our server folks. And so I know that that factoid, but I couldn't then double click and say, any more than that. And not because it's secret, but because that's not what I know about.
No, that's fair, man. That's absolutely fair. I do have to ask, and I've got to dig into that further. I need to find out who's the server guy, because I would love to know like how many Unbreakables, Oracle Unbreakables are out there. Just because no one seems to know. Obviously, at least someone sold some. So okay.
So let's see what else we okay. So shoot, now we kind of meandered. I was trying to
I
think what
did.
the
I had a
original
really interesting
question.
thing I was talking about, and
You,
then I totally
you
sidetracked my
did.
own darn self. That's okay. I don't take
Okay, it
notes
was
on
something.
anything because I'm not a
Oh,
prepared
okay. I know.
person.
I know. I know. Brian, thank goodness I've been listening to us. I know you haven't. So, but what it was about was, do we ship, um, do we ship other
Other
distros
distros,
on?
yeah.
Will we ship other distros? And I think the answer there is no plans in the
No
foreseeable
plans.
future. And I think
Okay.
we've got our team is lean and mean in us at mean enough as it is that to try and spread ourselves across preloading
And
more
supporting, yeah.
distros would do more harm than it would good,
Okay.
right? So yeah, I think that's the thing. And as you say, we have a lot of people who have gone out and tried it, and it does work on a bunch of other distros. And so, as long as that's the way, and we're being good community members and we're pushing drivers and fixes upstream, then knock on wood, it will work on a whole bunch of other distros.
Yeah, honestly, it really has worked fairly well. So I've been testing out one of the newer XPS 13s, and right now dual booting OpenSUSE Leap and Elementary on them, and they run great. No issues right out of the box. Everything works well. I can load up games where everything's fantastic. None of the individual components don't work in that scenario, and I mean that's kind of surprising. I mean, it shouldn't be surprising, but for a jaded Linux person who lived through the early 2000s and the horror that was finding laptops to install Linux on, and you have to go online and find wiki lists of laptops with compatible Wi-Fi chipsets and whatnot, it is kind of a delightsome exercise to just be able to throw whatever distro on a specific name brand piece of hardware and have it work. Do you have any plans on the Dell side of things to sell these bad mamma jammas in the stores?
Quick answer is no, that I'm aware of.
I want the long answer.
Yeah, no, I want to think that there might have been a point when we were looking at this. I cannot remember now.
I mean, I don't.
I'm sure we have tried it at some point, but not. I don't think it ever was on the developer side, right? It was some of the lower end
Sure.
stuff. And of course, we have through Android, we've got or Chrome OS, we've got on the Chromebooks more Linux stuff we do.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just going to ramble on about other Linux stuff we've got. So we've got our network. Oh gosh, what is it? OS 10, having nothing to do with the other OS 10 you may be aware of.
Right.
But this is for networking software, and this is based on Debian. We've also got some cool IoT things that like we're using Snappy for the IoT gateway boxes. A bunch of just various things that we're doing within the company that are using Linux in both the legacy Dell and the legacy EMC. That's kind of how we talk about the two sides that have come together. You've got a lot of folks that have been using Linux as part of their products for quite a while.
Fair enough. Fair enough. It just would be so amazing because I mean this is good hardware. I mean you guys have been at this for a couple of years. I've heard Dell's been making computers, and so the hardware is
3 years.
3 years now. It's good stuff, and I'm not a huge stock Ubuntu fan. I just don't like the user experience all that much. But the underlying system's great, and so it would be very cool even with a user experience that I'm not as big a fan of as some of the other alternatives out there. On this powerful a hardware, it still runs phenomenally well, and honestly is a very impressive machine to sit down and demo. It would just be so cool to be able to wander into a Fry's or a Best Buy and point over to the Linux powered machine, and it's a very it's a we made it sort of moment, you know, because every now and then, you know, Acer or Asus released like a netbook running a version of, actually I think a version of Mandriva, oddly enough, back in the old days during the old Acer or no, the old Asus EEE PC netbooks that they did, but they yanked those off really quickly. So then it was like, okay, we had a success for a moment, but then it was gone. It's like, oh, and the Chromebooks are cool because we can say there's Linux underneath.
Yeah, we've got those.
I know you do. I know, but it's not the same. It's not quite as awesome.
You're getting old and crufty.
Yes.
Hey, it's not like when I was a kid on the listservs and there.
I do want to tell
Get
people
off my lawn.
Yes, always get off my lawn. Before they're even on my lawn, I tell them to get off my lawn because I think they're thinking about my lawn. And it just would be so cool, man, to be able to walk in, even if it was just like a couple of flagship stores, like a random San Francisco all glass and steel kind of store, whatever the coolest Best Buy there is, you know, just get like one station with a triple with the
actually,
XPS
now that
13.
I think about it, we did used to sell these at Bed Bath and Beyond, right next to the curtains,
Beyond.
and right after. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
No, I'm joking. For anyone who thought I was serious, no, we never did sell these at Bed Bath or Beyond.
I'm going to be straight with you. If you guys sold an XPS 13 running Ubuntu at Bed Bath & Beyond, that would be top story news on so many tech sites. It would be ridiculous.
I'm sure.
It would be stupid, but I would love it, and I guarantee you I would write an article about that. And I would go to a Bed Bath & Beyond, and I would find out what other as seen on TV products they have there, and I would line them up all in a row next to an XPS. It would be amazing. Amazing.
Well, I'm taking notes, and I will bring this back to the product team because I think now that we know we've got your support on this,
you've got me on that, man.
I'm going to okay, Bed Bath and Beyond.
Bed Bath and Beyond specifically. I'm also a big fan of buying PCs at Joann's Fabrics. Those are good, and Arby's because they have the meats, and also the developer state class portable workstations. Those are the two things that they have at Arby's.
Well, one thing we have been in talks with McDonald's for the Happy Meals, and we thought you'd get a Big Mac, fries, and Sputnik. It's one thing we haven't. Yeah, exactly.
Do you guys have a mascot? Do you have a Sputnik mascot?
Well, I guess it would be the satellite itself, right?
Right. You guys should have like little stickers. Like I would put a Sputnik sticker on the back of my laptop.
I do have a sticker. Where the heck? Well, here we go.
Hey, yes, that's what I'm talking about. Yes.
We even have a next gen one that's that we've done a limited run. We need to do more where it's actually smaller because while I like to have the big, let everybody know that I'm using a Sputnik, screen real estate for the back of your laptop's limited. Not always. Yeah, and so we've done a little bit a more subtle one. First of all, do you know did I tell you how the name Sputnik came about?
No,
I just
assumed that you chose it because it's cool. That was my entire assumption.
Well, there definitely is the cool factor. But so if you know Mr. Mark Shuttleworth, he went back if you go back many a moon, he had thought computers, not computers. It was the security software which he sold to VeriSign during the .com days. So he made a significant amount of money. One of the things he did was he took. Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
and
he
took
rat
that and
bastard
he became
got to go into outer space. I know. I hold this against him continually.
Second space tourist. That's right. And so he went up in Soyuz, but because nobody goes up in Sputnik except for the dog. But that wasn't very cool, Soyuz. And so I said, okay, let's call it Sputnik. And so as a result, that's how it became that. And so, that's sort of the link between this and Ubuntu and Shuttleworth. So not completely right.
I got you, man. As a total side note, so I was talking with Mark Shuttleworth one time. And because the most fascinating thing about him to me is that he was in outer space. And so all I ever want to interview him about is his time in outer space because he was in outer friggin' space. And so
Yes, he
I'm
was.
talking to the guy, and one of the first questions off the top of my head is, what is the dirtiest joke you heard while in outer space? While you were in orbit around planet Earth, what's the dirtiest joke you heard? And he looked at me, startled and confused, as if he hadn't even thought of telling dirty jokes in low Earth orbit, which makes me very disappointed in him, because that is the first thing you do. Is, you know, you're going
Yeah,
into
oh,
Earth
yeah.
orbit, you sit down, you Google dirtiest joke ever until you find the best one, and then you tell it when you're in orbit. But he did say that apparently there's a black book of stupid things people have said while on the space station, and apparently
Interesting.
Mark Shuttleworth is in that book. For at one point, and you'll have to ask him this story to get it specifically, but at one point he's looking out the window, kind of looking down, you know, because there's no gravity, so he's floating all over the place.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
basically, he's got the window between his legs, so he's looking at his crotch, and say something about, "You can't believe the view right here," and so that made it into the black book of stupidest things said on the International Space Station. So I got to give him props for that, because if I was up there, I would be trying every day to outdo myself to fill that book up and make that book basically
I'm sure
my
you
own.
would.
And I give him props for at least having one good double entendre that he had while in space. Now all I want to do is talk about dirty jokes in space, but bringing it back to actual Dell stuff. So
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Were you saying something?
probably not. Okay. So who's your chief competitor? When you sit down to figure out, you know, your product lineup or your marketing, or how you address all of this, do you think of the competitors you have, and if so, who would they be?
Well, I think, and this is going to sound like a wishy-washy political answer, but the idea here is not necessarily you always have to be looking at who else is out in the market, right? It would be a lie to say that you're not, but you're looking at what technologies are coming down, what people are wanting, and how to get that to not just quote unquote follow the competition or be a fast follower, but to actually leapfrog. And so things like, just for example, the infinity display, which
Yeah.
is the fact that you have just a super hair's breadth of a bezel there, so that the screen goes all the way out to it. That allows it to be the smallest 13-inch laptop around. And so those types of things where you're working with your suppliers, seeing what technology is coming, as opposed to looking at what others are doing. Now, I think for us, one of the things that, being the Sputnik team, is we've always looked at Apple and what they've done. That being said, it never was a go head to head, right? Because you've got the people who love Apple, who, and you know, you would pry it from their cold dead hands. That being said, there's also a small subsegment, and the people that we were more interested or are more interested in is those people who bought a Mac because it had a Linux/Unix OS,
There's a
plus
lot of
it
those.
just worked,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And if they had a Linux laptop that worked, they would do that, but they couldn't have been bothered with, futzing with it so that it all worked. And so, I think it made a lot of sense. By having what we have now, there are a lot of people who are looking at it and saying, well, gosh, if I do have this, meaning a Linux laptop that just works, this is what I'm gonna go for.
Right?
And I think one thing we've seen is, as of late, I'll just read this one. There was something on Hacker News. They picked up the blog posting, the announcement of the precision lines, and see if I remember it correctly. Where someone wrote, Dell makes a better MacBook Pro than Apple. Didn't see that coming. And so those types of things that I think
All right.
are kind of gratifying.
Yeah,
But
that feels pretty good, right?
in general, we're working on how do we make the best Linux laptop around, and it's not so much about, okay, well, if Mac's got this, then we want that.
Right.
Let's just look at what we can do and what we can deliver. And like I said, we monitor the community to see what they're looking for. And so an example I give of that one is, although we've had Linux on the precision line for a long time. What we haven't had is it on that sort of developer sweet spot, I'll call, which is that the 5520, which is used to be the 5510,
Yep.
and before that was the M3800. I'm sure you're taking all these notes down, but
I remember the
what happened
M3800 very well.
is
Delightful rig.
yeah, exactly. So we're very focused when we launched, and we did the XPS 13. But if we had the infinite budget and people, we would have done what I like to call the Beauty and the Beast line, right? Which is the Svelte XPS 13 plus a precision line. So we didn't do that, but after we launched, all of a sudden we get a lot of feedback saying we really want to have one of these. And so we started by Jared Dominguez, who's our OS architect on this. And then just as an aside, he started on this project when he was on the server side. So it was just because he was super interested on Linux on the desktop that he worked. This wasn't his day job, but he worked with us, in a true open source fashion. So he then saw this opportunity, went through the M3800, saw what it took to run Linux on it, and documented the whole thing out. And then posted that information. And then that only fanned the flames, and we got more and more people saying they wanted a system like this.
Yeah.
So a year after that, we had the official line, and we were able to put it out. So like I said, if we get positive feedback from the community enough, then we look to actually go and then see how we can take in that input and hopefully deliver on it if we can.
So realistically, developer class mobile workstations, I kind of feel like Dell's figured that out, right? I mean, you guys have good quality hardware shipping with Linux. Even if it's not the version of Linux I would have picked, it's still shipping with Linux, and it's fantastic. It runs great. Yep. You guys have got the all-in-one that's out now. I haven't played around with that one, but it looks good, right? Looks like a good Linux-powered all-in-one. So realistically, looking around my house, if I'm thinking, okay, what other computery hardware am I continually running? What does Dell make that doesn't currently ship with Linux, and where would that fit into the, let's call them the holes in my digital life? Really, it comes down to really two things. One is the small notebooks, right? The sub notebooks size. I don't know if you want to call it mini ultra books or netbooks, whatever that phrase is. The ultra portables and tablets, right? So the Venue Pro type tablets that Dell makes. Those are the only two like categories remaining in the average nerd's life that Dell doesn't provide currently with Linux. Who do we talk to? Who's the best person to say, hey, fill in the blank? I sure would like to buy something like this. I would love to have a tablet. I mean, even if, so like, let's say, for example, Dell has a tablet line, right? So that tablet line, notoriously difficult to get Linux onto. Just very, very hard. And, whether that, it doesn't really even matter if anyone's at fault for that. It's just the hardware itself is hard to get Linux onto. There have been projects out there. Some people from Fedora have worked on that and made some progress. And I have too, and I've tried endlessly to make it happen because I want to. Has there been any interest internally at simply taking the stock Ubuntu 16.04 long-term support that you put on the developer releases and trying to get them onto some of Dell's other hardware segments, the other categories, the tablets, the really tiny sub-notebook lines, that sort of thing? Or is that still ways out there in the distance? Am I just dreaming and my dreams will never come to a reality and I'll just simply be sad here because of Barton George? Which way do you think it's going to go?
Brian, I would never crush your dreams. And with that said, no. So that's a whole side of the business.
Yeah,
exactly. They call me the dream crusher. There's dream catchers that you put up, and there's dream crushers.
It's just a little tiny plastic version of your head, and it just hangs from a window. Yeah,
that's right. Anyway, so that's a different side of the business. If you did have input, you could send it to me and I'd find the right people, but I wouldn't who would then say, who would put it on the product roadmap or
Right.
build a business case, but I could get you to the guy who could get you to the gal who could get you on the schedule.
A lady who knows a guy who knows a lady. Gotcha.
And who knows a dog that yeah.
Who could fly in Sputnik? So it
Yes,
kind of
exactly.
full circle right there.
It is. It
'Cause
is.
it would be really fascinating. Every now and then you see projects crop up. Put this version of Linux on this tablet. And whatnot. And some of them have certain levels of success, but none of them have had backing of a major corporation. None of them have had a Dell come along and say, "I am Dell. Hear me roar. Here's a tablet. It is filled with Linux, and you will buy it and be merry." Like no one's done that yet.
Are you free for commercials? I think we found our new
I gotta
a new
tell
commercial
you,
we want to run.
if
We
you
got
guys
the voiceover guy.
if you guys release a tablet running any version of Linux, and I mean any version, I will take it. Only dual boots Ubuntu and Mandriva. I will take those and I will run with them, and I will do those commercials for free. I know that I'm not alone. So I hear about this a lot. I've written a few articles about trying to get Linux on some of these tablets that, most of which are from Dell and a handful of other companies, but mostly like the Dell Venue Pro has been a very popular one for people to try and get it onto. And it comes up a lot. Now, how that would actually translate to sales outside of my amazing little bubble of Linuxdom that I exist within, who knows? But I just got to put it out there for the lady, the dog, the guy, and the lady who may be watching this, and who I may or may not write an article that's encouraging you to do so. Maybe think about it. Maybe crunch some numbers, pull up a spreadsheet, see if it makes financial sense. Just going to go ahead and put that out there.
Okay, okay, got it. Brian says, got it.
Yeah, it's in there now.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
being as you've been doing this for half a decade, what happens when Barton George gets hit by a bus? This is the Steve Jobs sort of scenario, right? Apple's doing great, and now that doesn't have a Jobs around, they've had a couple of hardware flops, and people are like, why'd they put that bar on that laptop? This is friggin' stupid. And then they're like, they made a phone out of plastic. Who are these jackass? And so you hear a lot of that. You've been clearly the visible face not Linux within Dell, because Dell does a lot with Linux, but of these sorts of things, of the laptops, of the prosumer laptops, let's call them, the developer-centric stuff.
Mm-hmm.
What happens if you're hit by a bus? Because I'm really bummed out if that happens, and I lose a line of Linux-powered developer workstations. That would be too many blows to my happiness for me to handle. So, is there a crew that is inside Dell, or is this real that could continue this going in the absence of a Barton George?
So, first of all, I'd like to say comparison Barton George and Steve Jobs. I don't think a lot of people have made that comparison, but I think because you have, it's legit, and I'll run with that.
Yeah, we'll put that on Wikipedia later.
Yeah, would you please?
Yeah, I got it.
So the bus scenario at this point, and I think that's one of the things we want to work out as this project gets bigger, is we want to look for more support, and just like what you're saying, so that there could be more than just me. If I decide to go off and become an orthodontist, that there's actually someone who can go on and take over from me. So that's part of the overall, how do we grow the business? And now that it's getting bigger, it's a more legitimate conversation to have.
You got to have that business continuity in the event of Barton George being hit by a bus or becoming an orthodontist. I hope the document is the orthodontist scenario. Just title that document that, and I think that would kind of sum it all up nicely. All right.
If I could tell you the number of good people we've lost to dental hygiene, it would be, the list would be too long to actually even.
Have you really lost a lot of people to dental hygiene? Like, I recognize that there might be a little bit of sarcasm in there, but I kind of legitimately want to know if people are leaving Dell to work on teeth. Like, that just seems craziness to me.
Yeah, you know, there probably have been, but
Okay.
I think I was sort of stretching the truth when I said there was a whole long list of them.
My faith in humanity is restored, because who the frig would want to work
Yes.
on teeth for a living? That is insanity. I am sorry to the
Oh
dentists and the
my.
hygienists out there, but come on, get out of people's mouths. It's weird. All right, Barton George. So again, where's the best place for people to check out all of the Linux developer workstation style offerings that Dell has? Where's the best place to go for that? I mean, is there like a one central page on Dell.com you can point people to? Do you want people to go to your blog? Where should they go?
Well, I would say for now, definitely go to my blog. I think that's so. If you post I did, it has links to the all the precision stuff. What
Nice.
I do need to do, and this is still part of the fact, while we are a very lean and mean organization, I need to go in and update um, dell.com/Sputnik or dell.com/developer.
Yes.
That will take you, both of those URLs will take you to the same place, but that's where it has the entire line of developer systems. So right there, if you look now, there'll be the XPS 13, which is the one currently shipping, so you're good there. We updated to put the 3520 because that started shipping last week,
Yep.
and then we have the other precision line that are still available. But I do need to go back and add in the 5520, which is now which is available as of today, as well as the new ones that are coming up. So all that's to say is that that will be the best place, but I need to tackle that and get it up there so that
Yeah, you
so
do. Get on
folks.
that, Barton
The other, the
George.
other, I know I will. It's on my list of things to do.
Yeah, put it down under the list of things Brian says you need to do. It's you make a tablet,
It,
update the friggin' website to have a nice little list added, and then make him like a sub notebook, because Brian really needs a good sub notebook. Those are oddly hard to find a good one nowadays. It's harder than it seems like it
yes,
should be. So list,
yeah.
list, list.
Yes, it is all mentally, I'm putting this all up here. But I will actually, the forum is another good place for people to go check out. And that's easier for me to go in and just, it's a wiki type style, and I can go in and I can update it myself. The other part on the web page takes a little bit longer, but it's not too bad. But that's something I could, like I said, I can just go in today. Well, probably not today. I got a few more other things, but relatively soon, and just go and update that. So that would on the Sputnik forum would be the place that folks could go to check that out. And there's a link, if you go to dell.com/Sputnik, there's a link there to the.
And with that, we appear to be at the end of this episode, because Barton George has completely lost connection. That is the strangest time for it to crap out I could possibly imagine, but kind of an effective one. I don't mind it. Tune in next week. Wait a minute, we're not done yet. Tomorrow we have a whole nother episode. We've got more stuff coming out. I got the creator of FreeDOS coming on in a couple of days. We got more stuff tomorrow. Good stuff coming here. If you want to watch this show, go to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Brian Lunduke. Go to lunduke.com where you can find it all posted there. I'll try and get it out to all the various social networks as well. This will be in podcast form very soon as well, for those of you who would prefer to be able to download it. And of course, this entire show is released under the Creative Commons license, because that's how I roll. Everything under the Creative Commons, which basically means you can take this show, cut it, edit it, remix it, do whatever you want with it, as long as you don't release it for like a commercial purpose. Like if you're just doing it for fun and releasing it, you can spread it far and wide. But if you want to do it for commercial purposes, all you got to do is send me an email and I'll say yes or no. I'm pretty easy about that. I just kind of wanted some form of control, a little bit, but not too much. Anyway, that's all I got. I'll see you guys back here tomorrow. And now we can actually end the first episode of the Lunduke Hour.